All right, eighth graders. Today we're focusing on what they call special systems of linear equations. So we've got what they call solving special systems of linear equations. So we're going to look at this first one. Y equals 6x plus 2, y equals 3x plus 1. Now, you're going to be looking at some things today where when they talk about special systems of linear equations, they basically mean that there's some times where lines are parallel to each other, which means they never cross each other, and which means they don't have an intersecting point, which means they don't have a solution. There's no solution. We also have some where they give you two different equations, and when you figure them out and you simplify them all, you actually find out that they're the same exact equation, which means that they're the same exact line, which means that it's an infinite solution. All the points are the same. And then you have some that will be like, they'll continue to give you some like what we've done, where there's just simply a solution. So let's look at this one. Now, as always, it's not going to change that we want to try to put them in slope-intercept form. So this is going to give us 6x plus 2 equaling 3x plus 1. Now, once again, we're going to try to isolate the variable. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. That gives me 0. I come over here. I subtract 3x. 6x minus 3x is 3x. Now, I need a 0 on both sides. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to subtract 2. That's going to give me 0. I have to come over here and subtract 2. You have to do that to both sides. 1 minus 2 is a negative 1. So I end up with 3x equals negative 1. Now, if 3x equals negative 1, okay, then to solve for x, I'm going to be doing negative 1 divided by 3. So it's going to be x equals negative 1 over 3. And that's what x equals. Now, if I go and plug that in to the equation, I'm going to plug that into this one right here. Y equals 3x plus 1. So I'm going to do 3 times a negative 1 over 3. So I'm just going to come down here, make 3 over 1. I'm going to multiply that by 1 over 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. I get 3 over 3, which is just 1. But it's a negative 1 over 3 and a positive 3, so I get negative 1. Now, I don't put, so I am at negative 1. Now, so that means that 3 times a negative 1 over 3 is negative 1. So that leaves me with y equals negative 1 plus 1. Well, negative 1 plus 1 is 0. So I actually come up with a solution here, and that solution is x is negative 1 over 3, y is 0. All right, so let's look at this one. 4y minus 4x equals 8, y equals x plus 2. Well, that one's already in slope-intercept form, so I'm going to leave that one alone for the time being. Let's rewrite that top one. 4y not equals 4y minus 4x equals 8. I want to isolate the 4y, which means I'm going to add 4x to both sides. That gives me 0 plus 4x over here, but I'm going to keep it in that slope-intercept form. 4y equals 4x plus 8. I can flip the numbers on an addition problem. But it's still not really slope-intercept form because it's not y by itself, it's 4y. So I'm going to have to divide everything by 4. Well, 4y divided by 4 is just y. 4x divided by 4 is x, and positive 8 divided by 4 is a positive 2. I end up with y equals x plus 2. Well, this one here was y equals x plus 2. So both equations are exactly the same, which means they are the exact same line. Okay? So that means every point is a solution. And this is what we call infinite solutions. when both equations end up being the exact same thing. All right, so let's look at this last one. This one looks like fun. 2 times x plus y in parentheses equals 9. First, let's go ahead and clear the parentheses. So 2 times x will be 2x. 2 times a positive y is going to be plus 2y. And that whole thing, it tells us, equals 9. So equals 9. Let's clear the parentheses there. 1 equals, so we end up with 1 equals, and let's just kind of put a line there to separate that. Negative 4 times x, which is going to be negative 4x. Negative 4 times a positive y is going to be minus 4y, because a negative times a positive is a negative. So let's rewrite these down here to give us a little more room. 2x plus 2y equals 9, and 1 equals negative 4x minus 4y. First of all, let's get things in slope-intercept form here. This first one, I can take the 2x and bring it over here by subtracting 2x from both sides. So that's going to leave me with 2y equals a negative 2x plus 9. Because I do 2x minus 2x, that leaves me with nothing. Nothing minus 2x leaves me with a negative 2x. For this one here, I want to get the negative 4y by itself. So I'm going to bring the negative 4x over here by adding 4x to both sides. Negative 4 plus 4 is nothing. So that leaves me with negative 4y is going to equal, and it's now nothing plus 4x because I had to add 4x to get to 0. So it's a positive 4x plus 1. All right, so here in this first one, I would have to divide everything by 2 because I want to get y by itself. So we're going to end up with y, 2y divided by 2 is y. Negative 2 divided by 2 is a negative 1, or just negative x. I don't put a 1 in front of it, but it becomes negative x. 9 divided by 2 is going to be 9 over 2, or if I want to think about 9 over 2, I can think about that as a mixed number. 2 can go into 9 4 times. I get 1 left over. My denominator is 2. So I'm going to go ahead and make that plus 4.5. Now, this one here, to get y by itself, I've got to divide everything by negative 4, because that's the number that's there. So negative 4y divided by negative 4 is just y. Now, if I take a positive 4x and divide that by negative 4, I'm doing 4 divided by negative 4. Well, that's going to be negative 1. I don't put 1 in front of a variable, so it's not going to be negative 1x. It's just going to be negative x, just like that one up there. When I take 1 and I divide that by a negative 4, okay, it's just going to become negative 1 divided by 4. A lot of algebra, folks, is just making division problem fractions. Just make sure they're in simplest form. So when I'm doing a positive 1 divided by a negative number, a positive divided by a negative, I know that's a negative. And it's 1 divided by 4. A fraction is just a division problem, 1 divided by 4. So it's going to be negative x minus 1 over 4. Well, we need to notice something now about these two equations that are now both in slope-intercept form. We know that slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. All right, now, these two equations are not exactly the same thing. It's not like example 2, where they both ended up being exactly the same thing, thus there was infinite solutions. These are not exactly the same thing. The only thing that's the same is the negative x. The y-intercept part is different. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is these are two lines that have the same slope. They both have a slope of -1. But the y-intercept is not the same, which means where they cross over that y-axis is not the same, which means we have two completely different lines falling at the same slope. That means they're parallel lines, and you should have learned long ago, lines that have the same slope are parallel. And you should have learned back in like 2nd or 3rd grade that parallel lines are lines that keep on going forever and ever without touching, without crossing, without intersecting. I should use 8th grade words, intersecting. Okay? Which means they're never going to cross, which means there is no solution. There's no intersecting point. And for these, we would say it's no solution. All right. Hope this makes sense, 8th graders. We'll talk to you later. Bye.